Welcome to the Go Reflect Yourself podcast, bringing you real strategies to cultivate the life and business of your dreams, full of freedom and fulfillment, starting from the inside out. Working hard and staying busy will only get you so far. To truly become happy, content, and who you're meant to be, we have to move beyond physical capacities and begin to look from within. We have to change our thoughts and our mindset into our most powerful assets, transforming you to take inspired action so you can become a better version of yourself and to have the life of your dreams.
You are stronger than you believe. You have greater powers than you know.
Why is it in business and life that we feel we have to be perfect to succeed? It's so frustrating. I've had so many conversations over the years about perfection. And let me just say this right now. This is one of my biggest soapboxes, so get ready for the spin. But perfection, we have so much pressure to do everything perfectly, to be perfect, to have everything perfectly done, especially mothers, working mothers at that. And no offense to our male listeners, because you guys suffer from this too. But women definitely have more pressure to have it all together and to be perfect. And it's so exhausting. To have a great life and to succeed in business, the truth is you don't have to be perfect. There are so many people who succeed very, very well, and sometimes just kind of luck into it if you really think about it and watch their success patterns. But I had a conversation the other day with a very successful woman who is a friend of mine, and she was talking about some advice that somebody had given her about if you really want to succeed, then something is going to suffer. Now, this particular woman is a young mother. She has 2 young children, and so really balancing the career and spending time with her family, it's been a struggle, as most people go through. Again, men and women alike. But this particular conversation really led me to think about how many people just go through this treadmill and how many people continue this pendulum of it has to be one way or the other. And this advice that when we were having this conversation, she's like, yeah, this lady who was a mentor of hers and whom she really trusted and liked and told her, you just are going to have to realize if you want to succeed at being a great businesswoman, then there are things that are going to suffer. If you're really great and really kicking it at work and you're really kicking it at the office, then probably your house is going to be a wreck. And you're going to have to know that your kids are going to miss things or that your kids just aren't going to have all these perfect situations. And first of all, let me just say that there are people who are so incredibly overboard with everything they do that it has to be perfect and buttoned up. And there are some learning lessons there. There's some lessons about letting go. There's lessons about not having so much control. There's lessons inside of there about just really understanding what your priorities are. But this conversation in general really struck a nerve with me because how many others are getting that same advice? And frankly, I looked at her and I said, oh my gosh, I think that's horrible. I think it's absolutely horrible. And here's why. I don't believe that you have to suffer. First of all, that's a mindset, right? That's a particular frame of reference. That is a decision when you're looking at, quote, suffering. But the truth is yes, there are things that aren't going to be done as well. They're not going to be done, quote, perfectly. Everything can't be done to a T the way that you would like it to all the time, especially when you have kids, especially when you're a young mother of toddlers and you're trying a new business and you're trying to balance and you have all these responsibilities. If you're a breadwinner or say you're a spouse and you work and your spouse stays home and you're the one that has the pressure really to provide for these things. Maybe there's other things you cannot do, because you're concentrating in working or building a career or building a business. So yes, there are times where you're not going to be able to do everything perfectly. And that's the truth. But to tell somebody, especially a young, struggling mother, that you're going to suffer, that other things are going to suffer, your house is going to suffer, your kids are going to suffer. And when we look at balance and we take a look at all the decisions we have and the choices we have, there's a ton of truth to you can suffer. There's a ton of truth to the fact that sometimes my kids may eat mac and cheese for a week straight. And that's not great, but they're fine. And I don't look at that as suffering. I look at that as decisions that we have to make. I've been a single working mom for 9 years now. And quite frankly, I think I balanced better when my children were younger because I had to. Now they're a little bit older. They have a whole lot more things going on, but they also have personalities of their own, and I empower them to kind of be their own people. Obviously, we still have rules and structures, but my point is that suffering's optional. Suffering is your decision if you want to look at things as suffering. And to give somebody advice to say that your life's going to suffer in one way or the other, I think, quite frankly, is just really horrible. And I know I've said that about four times now, but I believe that. And I wanted to bring this up today. It's heavy on my heart because I think balance is always a discussion that circles around. And it's never going away. It's never going to be met perfectly. And as time goes on, I have probably a million different ways to look at this word balance. But to summarize it in my philosophy, if you will, is I look at balance as harmony and perhaps chaotic poetry, if you will. It's definitely harmonized chaos, and chaos is not a bad thing. It doesn't mean things are suffering. It means you have learned to prioritize. It means that you're not going to do everything perfectly, and the key is to quit trying. And if you're like me, a type A personality, especially when I clean my house, and I love having people help me clean my house and, outsourcing those things. And yes, it's a big, big stress off of me. But the truth is I don't think anybody can clean my house better than me. It's because I know how I want it done. And if I don't do it, I don't think it's done right. And that's part of my struggle to know that I can't do that every day. I can't even do that every month. I cannot go through and clean my house every month or every week the way I want to. I just don't have the time. And I had to learn how to give that up. I had to learn how to give up the perfection of the way I wanted it. Now I can train people and I can explain and I can help lessen that stress for me. But in my heart, I know it's still not going to be done perfectly because I'm not the one doing it. But that's still okay because it's a decision. And the truth is done is better than perfect. And that's what gets us in trouble in business and in life. We tend to get on this hamster wheel. And if you think about the limitations that we put ourselves in, especially when we're starting a new business or we're trying to really grow or scale, we're trying to ramp up, we continue on this hamster wheel because we want every little step of the way perfectly. Maybe you're really, really wanting to grow your business and it's doing okay, but you know it can be doing better, but you're stuck. You're stuck because you're trying to have all these pieces in place perfectly first. Then you'll know you'll be able for it to flourish. Or then, if I have this piece done perfectly, then I'll be able to do this piece and boom, then it'll just be perfect. And it does not work that way. It never works that way. And that's where the more you can learn to let go, the more you can learn to realize that done is better than perfect, the closer you are to actually having balance, having success, having harmony, and having really what you're wanting, having your goals. So going back to that conversation that I was talking about with my friend who had the horrible advice of you're going to suffer, one of the things that I really stressed to her was what's really important to you. And you cannot 100% give yourself to every aspect of your life. And perhaps that's really where the other woman was trying to tell her that things are going to suffer. And I really tried to look at it from a position of she was helping her, my friend, instead of trying to sabotage her or have a negative perspective. But the truth is we cannot give 100% to each of these key areas of our lives. But if we give 100% at the moment that we're in it, and we understand what those moments are, that's a win. And then we can be there and we can be present for each of those areas of our lives. And while I'm at work, I'm able to concentrate as much as I can because all the other aspects are taken care of. And being mindful and being efficient, there's all these things that come into play with success. It's not about doing everything perfectly, because here's the key. And I've been searching for lots of things, but the easy button, the perfect button, the many other buttons, but that perfect button doesn't exist. And I know when I was younger, in probably all of my careers, young and starting the various things that I've done, I know I spent way too much time trying to have things done perfectly, trying to be that perfect example. And I think also there's a lot of pressure in this model image. And if I look, again, if I use the perspective of a young mother, I know that more, I can relate to that more than anything because I've been there. My kids are 14. Oh my gosh, 14 now, which is so scary to think about. It's so fun, but it's scary because I can't believe we're already here. But 14 and 11 at this moment, and I've not done everything perfectly, but I can relate to all those struggles of all these transitions. And I can relate to having this huge need to have others think that we just have it all together, and to look from the outside, looking in, that we just are this perfect example of everything, of our work, our success, our money, our health, our kids. We have all this pressure of trying to look a certain way and have this model image. Now, perhaps that's a whole other conversation about why we care so much about those things. But I think we all do, and I think we all can relate to that in a lot of ways, no matter what position you're in, no matter what your circumstances. And I'm talking about kids more because that's part of my everyday life. But no matter what, we've got pressure. Even if we're in a corporate job, we've got pressure from our peers and our bosses and our everything and our employees. And we want to have this certain image that we know everything and we're buttoned up perfectly. And that's so much pressure that we put on ourselves. And it's so much pressure that we continue to try to meet this expectation that sometimes it's just not possible. But the bottom line here is, the key is to quit trying to please everybody. Just stop it. I'll probably repeat this a gazillion times because no, it's not that easy. And it's certainly lots of habits, but there are ways to examine and there's ways to really understand and to be able to balance better. And I think balance gives, I don't like using the word balance because I think balance does mean an either or. Balance is like this, tipping point of a scale that if you are great in one thing, something, quote, does have to suffer. And I don't like looking at it like that because it's not about that. We can't be everywhere. We can't do everything at the same time. That's just what life is. So instead of looking at, quote, this balance, how about this harmony? This harmony between everything that we're doing and this harmony with the things that are important to us and prioritizing those things. So at the end of the day, it's really about that. It's about stop trying to please everybody. It's about being done. Done's better than perfect. If you've got a project, let's be honest, you can go over and over and over it. You can have somebody else go over it. And yeah, you're improving it perhaps. Maybe you're finding errors. That's great. Maybe you are improving it. But at the end of the day, you cannot spend 24/7 going over that project or book. You've written a book and and I've done this. I have a book that I wrote 7 years ago and I shared it with a friend, and there was a particular person that I wanted to share it with to have them help me with the forward, and I was too scared to at that time. And I have shelved that book. And the truth is it wasn't perfect then, and it's not perfect now either. And I've dabbled in this particular book for a long time, and it's still not ready. And I know that. And I'm okay with that right now because I truly believe that it's not a priority with where I'm at the moment. So I gave up beating myself up on trying for that thing to be perfect. But the truth is if I was ready for it to be out right now, and even the book that I had 2 years ago, I self-published a book, my very first one, The Digital Marketing Success Formula. And I started that really just trying to write a guide. I started it with just trying to be able to help my clients with understanding some of the roadmaps and the formulas that I've created, putting the steps and the pieces together. And I remember spending an entire month that summer, early that summer, because it was 2 years ago right now. It was sometime in June or early July. I can't remember the exact release date of it, but I had a proofreader, had an editor, and I don't know. There might be some errors in it. I really don't know. Nobody has said anything if there are, and if you have a copy of that book and you have found an error, that's fine if you want to tell me. I'm happy to fix it, actually. It's totally fine. But I had to get to the point of realizing, look, done's better than perfect. And that's probably really horrible advice when you're writing a book. And if you're a publisher out there, you're probably like, oh my gosh, don't listen to this crazy person because that's just ridiculous. But my point isn't about having errors. My point's not, I do not encourage errors. I do not encourage sloppy work. This is not that discussion. The discussion is when is enough enough? How many different editors do I have to go over my book before I have a comfort factor of saying, okay, now I can press play. Now I can actually move forward. Now I can feel accomplished enough to push play and to move forward. So it is a decision. It is a mindset. And really, if you think about it, it comes down to the confidence of knowing that whatever happens when I push play, that I am equipped enough to handle it. If it flops, okay, now I know and I can handle it. If it succeeds, now I can handle that. Either way, there's not a right or wrong. Either way, it's a decision. And I think that's the biggest part is if I don't make a decision, or if people, when they're really wrangling with something or struggling with something, by not making the decision, keeps them in a position of power and control. But once we release that and put it out there in the world and we press play, we can't take it back. And that's that part of that perfection and that control and that confidence. And I'm telling you, I have had many flops of many different things. And you know what? I'm still here. And I'm okay. And I've survived those things. This is a really hilarious story. Early in the summer, there was a new camp that I wanted my daughter to go to. And she was really nervous. And I was so proud of her because I would have been nervous too. And quite frankly, at her age, if my mom told me to go to this camp, it was a sports camp, a sport that she's never played. She's going in ninth grade, so there very well could have been girls that hadn't played before, but probably few. Most of the girls probably had played this sport. And I really encouraged her to try it. And she plays other sports, but I really wanted her to just try to explore a little bit more. And she went. And I told her before, I'm like, look, what's the worst that can happen? Okay, it's scary. Yeah, I get it. And I would be scared too. But just feel it. Just do it anyway. Say hi to somebody, smile at somebody. But what truly is the worst that can happen? So I was so nervous when I dropped her off. And then when I picked her back up, I was so nervous. I actually got there early just so I could watch. And I was probably more nervous for her. And I was so proud of her. She was so brave. But anyway, when I picked her up, first thing she said when she got in the car, I cannot wait to hear what her response was. And the first thing she said was, she's like, Mom, you were right. It wasn't that bad. Now, let me tell you, from a 14-year-old girl, that comment, that was probably the most affirmation I'm going to get at that age. But what she really meant was it wasn't that bad. Nothing devastating happened. It was scary. Yeah, she was probably a little awkward. She was definitely out of her comfort zone and her element. But she's there. She survived. She did it. I was so proud of her. But we all have those moments. And that's really the point, is it wasn't that bad. Maybe you did flop. Maybe somebody said something. It could have turned out, she could have had a different experience that day. But she still would have survived, and she would have gotten through it either way. And that's the point. We get through these things either way. So being perfect, just stop. Just stop it. Being perfect is not a winning factor for success, because it's impossible. It's an impossible thing to constantly put that pressure upon us ourselves of being perfect. And now it's time for the Go Reflect Yourself tip of the day. What are some of the strategies that can help you to be able to create that harmony and that, if you want to call it balance, fine, but I call it harmony. And it's really that priority. I call it the priority tipping point, or the wheel of priority. And the first thing you do really is to get out a piece of paper. And I'm going to literally do it as I'm saying this. You get out a piece of paper, and I like drawing a circle because I think for me, my brain works better with that visual. Draw a big giant circle on your piece of paper. And then in the middle of that circle, you've got a choice, because people look at this differently. The middle of the circle can be you, or it can be God, or it can be spirit or the universe, whatever, or vice versa, meaning the big outer wheel could be. But regardless, what you do then is you take that wheel and then you divide it. You start drawing pie pieces. Now, there's not a perfect number of pie pieces. 5 to 7. I like the number 7 because I think there's a lot of symbolism in the number 7. And for me, that's a good number. But there are 7 major elements and key priorities of my life. But what you do then is you take a look, and inside of each of those pies, if you will, key areas of your life, you name them. So one could be financial, and there's no particular priority, and you can create the wheel however you want. And this is one of the exercises I do with some of my coaching clients to really understand how to put things in priority and really understand how to create that harmony. And what it does is it lessens stress. It helps to really reflect every day on what those priorities are. But we can start with whichever one you want, but you can start with one of the wheels, financial, and then you can put family or relationships, however you want to name that. Another could be career. The financial could be financial or money. I mean, those are clearly interchangeable words. They could be your intellectual. It could be fun. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are 5. It could be bucket lists. It could be just kids, if you want to have that a separate thing, or if you want to have friends to be in a separate category, or I'm trying to think what I'm missing. So the spiritual, again, can be the center or it can be the outer. I draw it, I put actual me in the center, and then I draw another circle on the outer, and then I put spiritual there, because I believe that spirit is all around us, and no matter if it's God or, again, whatever your beliefs are, but I believe that that's all interconnected, and I am me. But some people look at it just the opposite. They put spirit in the middle as the nucleus, and then you are the outer. I do it just the opposite. I think I'm me, but the spirit is all around me and encompassing all of those things, which is saying the same thing. But what you do then is, once you've identified the key areas of your life, and you can't have too many. You can, yes. So when I say you can have too many, is there's just too many things to focus on. If you have 10, that's way too much. I do 5 to 7. But then what you do is you go through and you take a look. And in the inner parts of that wheel, I'm going to shade to a point where I feel like I have achieved contentment in that key area. And then what I mean, basically what you're going to do is you're going to put a rating. So for example, for me, fun, I don't think I give myself enough fun. So I'm always going to rate that. Right now I'm rating it that about a 40 to 50%. So then I'm going to shade in that wheel to about that 40 to 50% mark. So then each one of those categories, I'll go in and do that depending upon what my rating is. You can do it from a 1 to 10 scale. I like doing things in percentages because that's just how I've been trained, because I come from the financial world. But it's all the same. So once you've completed that exercise, then you have a visual of your wheel. Now your wheel is probably going to be out of balance. Your wheel is going to need some alignment. That's the key of looking at this, is how out of alignment is that wheel. The goal is to try to increase the level of satisfaction and contentment inside of each of those areas. And the goal then is to see really what areas you need to work on more. Because to have that inner contentment and to have that fulfillment, we do need that wheel to be as well-rounded as possible. And we also need it to be full. We need that wheel. If I go back to the perfection conversation, you're probably not going to hit a 10 on every single thing. But if you can hit 8, 9, 10 in everything, that's amazing. That is beyond amazing. That's really where we get true fulfillment from. And it's each of those areas. And in later discussions, I will show you in how to really break down each of those areas and grow and have contentment. But it's everything that we're talking about here. And when you start reflecting on the areas and you start looking at it from this perspective of saying, oh my gosh, maybe it's, I'm giving so much to my career. I'm like at an 8 or 9, like my career is just really on target. That's great. But then when you look on the opposite wheel, then you say, maybe my intellectual is suffering because I don't read. Maybe my intellectual is suffering because I'm not pushing myself out of my comfort zone to learn new things. And I put intellectual on my wheel because I do think that's really important. And in order for us to grow and to be better at everything, we have to continue to grow our brains. And listening to this podcast is one part of that. So kudos to you and thanks for being here. But that's the truth. I mean, when we feel things in our mind that are positive and productive and helpful, that's growing our intellectual ability, and it's growing and having the reach to have success in all of those things. So that's the point here. When you take a look at the wheel and you really start to identify where things are a little less than they need to be, that's when you can look at your day, and that's when you can start. It doesn't mean give up on everything else, and it doesn't mean stop feeding those things. It just means, how can I take some of that energy? Maybe I can be a little bit more efficient at work so I can free up time to read more. Or maybe I can be a little bit more, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't say this. Your health. I didn't put that as one of the wheels. Of course, my goodness. First thing in the morning, work out, feed your body, treat it well. But that typically gets pushed way down on priority. And I'm recording this late in the day, so that's probably why I forgot about it, because I'm exhausted today, but that's okay, because I'm here and I'm enjoying this. I love doing this. But the whole point of the balance wheel, and you can call it the balance wheel, I call it so many different things, the life satisfaction wheel, the life priority, the key priorities, call it, make it whatever name you want. Make it a name that is important to you. And once a month, go back to this wheel and keep them. Keep the wheel, date it today, keep it. And then what you can do between now and the next month is every single day, you can look at what can you do every single day to contribute to make each one of those areas more efficient and effective. That way you can start increasing the satisfaction and the achievement of that segment of your life. That's how we learn to have harmony. That's how we learn to be able to put all these things in place. And maybe if I think that my household's suffering, or that my kids are not getting enough attention or nourishment or whatever, maybe that's when I start outsourcing other things to help free up my time, or I start outsourcing things at home. Maybe it's I buy pre-cooked meals, or we have somebody to come in and cook for us once or twice a week, or whatever that is. And these are all strategies that you can think about, and we'll talk about in future segments. But to be able to start, this is the start of the reflection of what's important. So I encourage you to go through this exercise, and I will create and put in the notes an example. But please let me know. I would love to hear what yours looks like, how it's going, and what you're improving on. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Go Reflect Yourself. For more inspired action or to stay in touch, head on over to goreflectyourself.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at #HeatherJKreider or heatherjkreider.com. Until next time, this is Heather J. Kreider challenging you to go reflect yourself.